All right, in just a few hours, President Obama will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu at the White House. The topic, Iran's nuclear program. Over the weekend, President Obama said he will not hesitate to use force when it is necessary to defend the United States and its interests. Joining me to talk about the latest is Aziz Abu Sarah, the co-executive director of the Center for World Religions, Citizen Diplomacy, and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming in.
You mastered the name by now.
I know, by now, yeah. It's the longest title of any guest that we have here. Let's talk about the meeting today. Now, the president sounded tougher yesterday than he has been sounding. What's the tone of this meeting likely to be between the president and the prime minister?
Well, I think the meeting yesterday, or the speech President Obama did yesterday to AIPAC, tells us a little bit about the meeting today. He was welcomed very warmly in AIPAC, which is something wasn't necessarily expected because of his different stands in the last, and the administration had the last few years. However, his tough stand on Iran got him a lot of stand-up ovations, and I think, therefore, the meeting today with Prime Minister Netanyahu will be a good meeting. There'll be still differences. Israel will still push for an early strike on Iran. As we heard yesterday, President Obama said that's not something the U.S. is interested to do at the moment. Say there's still a place for diplomacy. He doesn't think it's time, but he's not hesitant to use it in the future.
How open do we think, well, I shouldn't say how open, do we think Israel will be open to delaying things a little bit longer to try to let these international sanctions kick in and have more of an effect?
Israel doesn't, the Israeli government doesn't see it as in its best interest to wait. It sees that if there's a strike in Iran, it should happen sooner than later. However, it's also constrained by the European, the American decisions, and so there will be negotiations happening. However, there are some people who believe Israel might actually strike Iran without a green light from the United States or from Europe.
Which would be rather amazing in some ways. If Israel does that, let's say they take military action without U.S. support, you know, because the U.S. isn't happy with the timing of it.
Right.
What does that do to U.S.-Israeli relations?
That happened before. It's not the first time. It happened with the Iraqi nuclear attack that Israel had, and it did it on its own, and it didn't hurt the American-Israeli relation. This time, though, it's a little bit more complicated because how much does it put American soldiers who are in the Gulf in harm? And depending on the Iranian response, which many Israelis believe it's not going to be a harsh response, that it's going to be very contained, the relationship would be affected. If an attack on the American soldiers can prove costly, then the U.S.-Israel relationship would not be good after that.
With the president indicating yesterday, and in an interview that he did at the end of last week with the Atlantic magazine, with the president indicating that military action is an option even for the U.S., is it just a matter of time before there is, in fact, military action? Yeah,
there's a belief within the U.S. administration, the Obama administration, that it's still too early, that there is still a diplomatic way to move on, especially with what happened recently with North Korea. North Korea is viewed more radical in some ways than Iran, and yet they were able to reach some agreement, and so that's scaring Israel because they don't believe Iran is going to be in the same direction. But you're also looking at complications in the region. The region in the Middle East is very unstable at the moment, and you have the Strait of Hormuz, and the possibility of gas prices going really high. And we are in an election year in the United States. A war can be devastating to President Obama, especially who's now looking better in the elections. So he doesn't want the prices of oil to double, possibly even triple, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed. If a region goes into war and you have Azerbaijan now involved, Israel just sold weapons to Azerbaijan recently, and it's on the border with Iran. So you have a lot of complications that the American administration is not looking forward to.
How long might it take for sanctions to have the desired effect?
It'll take at least, it's starting to take an effect. And you can see some effect on it on the Iranian regime, but it will take much longer. It will take a couple more months at least to start kicking in. How much will the Iranian regime, though, be affected themselves is still a question, because normally it's people who get affected by it. And when people get affected by those sanctions, they stand with the regime against the outsiders. And that's also likely to happen if a strike happened on Iran, that the people, the Green Movement, who stood against the current government and Khamenei, they will side with their government because they'll feel outside attack.
All right, I suspect we will have you back again to talk about this, and we'll see how the meetings at the White House go today. Aziz Abu Sarah with George Mason University. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.